This is my true story. I gave my life to one woman, working hard to provide her with a home, comfort, and stability. I thought loyalty and devotion would always be enough. But instead of respect, I was given humiliation. She called me useless, a burden, a man with no value, and she did it in front of others. Her words crushed me, but I stayed silent because I was preparing something greater. I did not scream. I went to court with the truth. Before I tell you how I exposed her, comment where you're watching from and subscribe so my story can reach more people. I spent my whole life working to give my wife and family a future they would never have to fear. I was not a rich man, but I was a man who worked with my hands, my back, and my time. Every morning, I left the house before the sun rose, and many nights I came back long after the sun had gone down. I worked long hours, took extra shifts, and gave up weekends when bills were tight. My hands grew calloused, my body ached, and my hair turned gray faster than I thought it would. But I told myself it was worth it. It was all worth it, because I was doing it for her. I believed love was built not on fancy gifts or big promises, but on sacrifice. And I sacrificed everything for her. When she wanted a nicer home, I worked harder until I could pay for it. When she wanted security, I gave her stability. When she wanted comfort, I gave her all the little things she asked for, even if it meant I had nothing left for myself. I lived with holes in my shoes at times, so she could buy what she wanted without worry. I skipped vacations, I skipped rest, I skipped moments for myself because I thought marriage meant putting her first. I believed that loyalty and devotion were enough to keep love alive. I never looked at another woman. I never betrayed her trust. I carried our marriage on my shoulders when life became heavy, and I thought she saw me as her partner in that. When times were hard, I reminded her that we would get through it together, and I believed those words. I thought she believed them too. I trusted her fully. I trusted that the woman I came home to every night respected me, even if I was tired, even if I was worn down. I thought she understood that everything I gave up was so she would never have to. I gave her my best years, my energy, my youth, and my loyalty. And I did it without complaint. I never imagined she would one day turn against me. I never thought the same woman who once smiled when I walked through the door would one day call me useless. But looking back, I realize I built my life on sacrifice, while she built hers on taking, and I was too blind with devotion to see the difference. The day of humiliation is burned in my memory because it was not only her words, but the way she said them, sharp and cruel, meant to crush me in front of others. It happened during a family argument, one of those moments when tempers rise and people say things they should not. But what she said was not heat of the moment. It was truth she had been holding inside and waiting to throw at me. We were surrounded by family, her relatives, my relatives, people we had known for years, and the room was full of voices until she raised hers above everyone else. She pointed at me and called me useless. She said I was a burden, that I had no value as a husband or as a man. She said it loud enough so everyone could hear, and when the room grew quiet, the words hung there, heavier than any weight I had ever carried. I sat in my chair, frozen, unable to move, feeling like the ground had opened beneath me. My dignity, the same dignity I had built through decades of work and sacrifice, crumbled in an instant. I tried to hold back the tears because I did not want anyone to see me broken, but inside, I felt like glass shattering. No insult in my life had ever cut so deep. It was not just the words, but the betrayal behind them. She was the one I gave my life to, the one I trusted above all, and now she looked at me with contempt in front of our family. I saw the looks on the faces of others, some shocked, some uncomfortable, some even turning their eyes away because they did not know what to do. I wanted to defend myself, to stand and remind everyone of the years I spent working, the sacrifices I made, the loyalty I had given her. But no words came out. I sat there in silence, swallowing the pain, letting her voice echo in the room while mine stayed buried in my chest. At that moment, I felt small, smaller than I had ever felt in my life, like everything I had done, everything I had built, meant nothing. She had stripped me bare in front of others, and I could not find the strength to fight back. That humiliation lived in me long after the argument ended. I replayed it every night, hearing her call me useless, hearing the family's silence, feeling my pride collapse again and again. It was a wound that did not heal. It was the moment I realized that the woman I had trusted to stand beside me no longer saw me as her partner, but as her enemy, someone to destroy to lift herself up. After the day she called me useless in front of everyone, I could not get her words out of my head, but I also could not shake the feeling that there was more behind them. I had already seen signs before, small things that did not make sense, but I told myself to ignore them because I did not want to believe they were real. She stayed up late at night on her phone, and when I walked into the room, she would hide the screen. She told me she was going out to see friends, but she always came home later than she should, and her excuses never sounded the same twice. I noticed she dressed up more when she said she was running errands, and sometimes she came back with no shopping bags at all. I wanted to trust her, but my gut told me something was wrong. After her insults, I decided I could not ignore the signs anymore. One night I waited until she fell asleep, and when her phone buzzed on the table, I picked it up. What I found confirmed what my heart already feared. There were late-night texts from a man whose name I did not recognize. The messages were full of words no married woman should ever send to another man. They talked about secret meetings, about times when I thought she was out with family, but she was with him. They shared jokes about me, laughing at the man who had given her everything. Each message cut me like a knife, but I kept reading because I needed to know the truth. The deeper I went, the more the proof piled up. Photos she had sent, plans they had made, lies they had built together to keep me blind. There was no mistake, no misunderstanding, no excuse that could erase what I saw. She was having an affair, and she thought she had hidden it from me. Her words at the family argument, the way she called me useless, suddenly made sense. She had to tear me down. She had to make me look weak, because deep down, she knew she was the one guilty of betrayal. Her cruelty was a mask, a way to cover her lies. I sat there in the dark with her phone in my hand, my chest heavy, my heart broken, realizing that the woman I had spent my life with had betrayed me in every way. The bitter truth was clear. Her insults were not just anger. They were a weapon she used to hide her own shame. She was not only unfaithful but unrepentant, and she thought she would never be caught. I closed the phone, put it back, and sat in silence, feeling like everything I had believed about my marriage had been a lie. The nights that followed were the longest of my life. I lay in bed with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, hearing her breathe beside me as if nothing was wrong, and all I could think about were the words she had said and the messages I had read. Every insult replayed in my head, her voice echoing as she called me useless, her laughter cutting through me as though I had never given her anything. Alongside those insults came the memory of her affair, the texts I had seen with my own eyes, the secret meetings she thought I would never discover. Together, they played like a cruel film in my mind, night after night, stripping away the man I once thought I was. I had worked my entire life to build a home for her, to give her stability and comfort, and this was how she repaid me. I tried to understand how someone could be so cold, how someone could take years of devotion and throw it away as if it meant nothing, but there was no answer. The more I thought, the more I realized she had not only betrayed me, she had tried to break me. By humiliating me in front of our family, she wanted me to look small, powerless, and weak, so that when her lies finally surfaced, she could claim I was already a failure. She wanted to discard me with no dignity left, to walk away from the marriage as though she were the strong one and I was the burden. That thought cut deeper than any insult. I realized then that my silence was not weakness. My silence was strategy. Every moment I kept quiet, every time I held back my anger, I was building my strength. She thought I was broken, but I was waiting. She thought I would go down quietly, but I was planning. I told myself I would not let her discard me like a piece of trash after I had spent my life giving her everything. I would not be her fool. I would not let her lies be the last word. As I sat alone in the dark, I promised myself that I would rise, not with rage, not with screaming, but with truth. And when the truth came out, it would cut deeper than her insults ever could. I decided that I would carry myself with dignity until the day I revealed it, because nothing destroys a liar more than undeniable proof delivered in silence. It did not take long before she made her move. After months of insulting me, mocking me, and carrying on her affair behind my back, she filed for divorce. She walked into the house one afternoon with the papers in her hand, her face set with confidence, and she acted like she had already won. She claimed that I had failed her as a husband, that I was no longer the man she married, and that she deserved more than I had given. She painted herself as the victim, saying she had been forced to live with a man who was useless, a man who was nothing but a burden. She said these things not just to me, but in the papers and to anyone who would listen. She wanted the world to see her as innocent while I carried all the blame. She demanded more than she deserved. She wanted money, property, even respect, as if she had earned it after everything she had done. I listened as her lawyer repeated her lies, each one cutting deeper, each one making me out to be a failure. She thought she was clever, thought she could twist the story so the judge would see me as the weak husband and her as the suffering wife. She thought she could walk away with everything while leaving me with nothing. I sat in silence, not because I was defeated, but because I knew something she did not know. I had the truth. While she tried to shame me with her words, I kept calm, because I knew her act would collapse the moment the truth came out. In court filings, she claimed she was the one who held the marriage together, that I was the one who let it fall apart. I read those words and felt anger rise, but I did not let it control me. Instead, I placed her lies side by side with the evidence I had collected. The texts, the photos, the call logs, all of it told the real story. She had betrayed the vows she pretended to honor, and soon everyone would see it. She thought filing for divorce was her victory, but in truth, it was her trap. Because the courtroom she dragged me into would become the place where her mask was ripped off. I let her build her case, let her speak her lies, let her prepare to stand before the judge and humiliate me again, because I knew when my turn came, I would not need long speeches or excuses. I would only need the proof. She filed for divorce to discard me, but she did not realize she had given me the perfect stage to expose her. Once the divorce papers were filed, and I saw the lies she had written about me, I knew the time had come to gather every piece of evidence I had and prepare it carefully. I could not walk into court with anger alone. Anger would not save me. Anger would not convince the judge, and anger would not protect my dignity. What I needed was proof, clear and undeniable, the kind that could not be twisted or explained away. So I began my work in silence. Every night I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I had taken months before. I sorted the messages, one by one, reading them again, even though every word tore into me. Messages where she mocked me to another man, laughing at the man who had given her decades of sacrifice. Messages where she promised love and loyalty to someone else while calling me useless behind my back. Messages where she arranged secret meetings on the very nights she told me lies about errands or visiting friends. Each one was saved in a folder, labeled and dated, so there would be no doubt about the timeline. I looked at the photos again, photos of her dressed up for him, photos that matched the nights she came home late, photos that showed him in places he should never have been with her. I matched them with call logs that showed long conversations between the two of them at hours when a married woman should be with her husband. Piece by piece, I built the story that revealed her betrayal in full. I printed copies so that even if one set was lost, I would always have another. I put them in an envelope, then I made a digital file and saved it on a drive. I even wrote down notes of what each piece showed, so that the judge would not need my words alone, only the evidence in front of him. As I gathered everything, I thought about how she had called me useless, how she had tried to strip me of my dignity in front of family, and how she had filed papers filled with lies to make herself the victim. But the more I prepared, the stronger I felt, because I knew her mask would soon fall. My silence had not been weakness, it had been patience. While she laughed in secret, I was building her downfall. While she told her story to others, I was preparing the truth. When I looked at that folder, I no longer felt like a broken man. I felt ready to walk into the courtroom, ready to face the judge, ready to hand over the proof and watch her world collapse. The folder became more than just evidence. It became my shield, my weapon, my voice. She thought I would go down quietly, but I had armed myself with the truth, and the truth would be louder than any insult she had ever thrown at me. The day in court came, and I remember every detail because it felt like the moment my entire life had been leading to. The courtroom was full, with family sitting on the benches, lawyers moving papers, and the judge watching over everything with a serious face. My wife walked in with confidence, her head held high, acting as though she had already won. She spoke to her lawyer with a smile, as if the outcome was certain. She believed her story, the one she wrote in her divorce papers, would convince everyone that she was the victim and I was the man who had failed her. She thought her insults would carry weight with the judge the same way they had cut me down in front of family. When the session began, her lawyer stood and painted a picture of her as a loyal wife trapped in a marriage with a husband who was useless, lazy, and incapable of giving her the life she deserved. They repeated the same words she had thrown at me before, calling me a burden, a man with no value, a man who had wasted her best years. Every sentence they spoke was another attempt to strip me of my dignity. I sat quietly at my table, listening, my hands folded, my face calm. The judge listened too, nodding slightly, taking notes, giving her the chance to present her story. The room seemed to lean in her favor, and I could feel the weight of every eye on me, some filled with pity, others with judgment. But I did not move. I waited. My wife grew bolder as she spoke, repeating her insults directly, turning to the judge and saying I had never been a true husband, that I had offered her nothing, that she had carried the marriage alone. Her voice was sharp, her words cruel, and for a moment the courtroom was silent, except for her attacks. She thought she was breaking me again, thought she was humiliating me in front of everyone, just as she had done before. But what she did not know was that I was not afraid. I was not broken. I was ready. I had prepared for this day, and every insult she threw only made the moment I was waiting for stronger. When her side finally finished, and the judge turned to me, asking if I had anything to say in my defense, I stood slowly. I did not shout. I did not argue. I simply reached for the folder I had prepared and held it in my hands. My heart beat steady, my mind clear. This was the moment I had been waiting for. When the judge gave me the chance to speak, I did not waste time with long speeches or excuses. I held the folder in my hand and walked slowly to the bench. The courtroom was silent, every eye on me, waiting to hear what I would say. My wife stared with confidence, certain I had nothing, certain I would stumble, certain she had already won. I placed the folder in front of the judge and said only a few words. She calls me useless, but here is her truth. I stepped back and let the judge open the folder. Inside were the screenshots of her late-night messages, pages of words exchanged with the man she betrayed me with. Words that mocked me, words that promised him the love she denied me. There were photos, each one a piece of proof, each one undeniable. There were call logs, showing hours of secret conversations when she claimed she was with family or busy elsewhere. The judge read silently, his expression changing with every page. The silence in the courtroom grew heavier, thicker, until gasps began to break through. Family members leaned forward, eyes wide as they saw the lies she had hidden so carefully. Lawyers shifted in their chairs, whispering to each other as the truth spread across the room. My wife's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The confidence she carried into that courtroom was gone in an instant, replaced by fear, shame, and disbelief. She tried to reach for the papers, tried to explain, but the judge raised his hand to silence her. Her truth was no longer hers to hide. It was in the open, in front of everyone. Screens were brought forward, showing the digital copies, and the texts lit up for all to see. Her words, not mine, exposed her betrayal. The courtroom erupted in whispers, gasps, and shaking heads. The man she had betrayed me with was named clearly in those messages, and now his name was tied to her shame forever. I stood still, saying nothing more, because I did not need to. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Every insult she had thrown at me collapsed under the weight of her own lies. She had called me useless, but it was her who was exposed as unfaithful, dishonest, and cruel. The revelation was complete, and the silence that followed carried more power than any argument I could have made. The moment the evidence was shown, the entire courtroom shifted. The family who had believed her lies sat in silence, staring at the screen with disbelief and shame. The same relatives who once nodded when she insulted me now looked at her as if they had never known her at all. Gasps echoed and whispers spread like fire across the benches. Her lawyer, who had spoken with so much confidence, sank back into his chair, flipping through the pages of proof with a pale face. He had no defense left, no way to spin what was written in her own words. The judge's expression hardened, his patience gone, his eyes fixed on her as if weighing every lie she had told against the truth he now held in his hands. My wife tried to speak, tried to deny, but the judge cut her off. Her voice cracked, her hands shook, and tears streamed down her face, but no one moved to comfort her. She stood completely alone, stripped of her false pride. The man she had betrayed me with was dragged into the light, his name repeated in whispers by family members and strangers alike. His reputation collapsed as quickly as hers, because now their affair was no longer a secret. It was evidence recorded in official court documents. Every person in that room knew what she had done, and there was no way to erase it. The humiliation she had tried to force on me now belonged to her, tenfold. The judge announced that her claims against me had no merit, that the case she tried to build was nothing but lies, and that the court would not reward betrayal. Her demands were denied. The property she wanted, the money she thought she would take, the victory she imagined, all of it vanished in an instant. The whispers grew louder, turning to disgust. Even her own family turned their faces away, some standing and leaving the room, too ashamed to be connected to her disgrace. My lawyer placed a hand on my shoulder, but I did not need comfort. I stood tall, calm, watching the lies unravel just as I had planned. I felt no joy in her tears, but I felt justice. For once, the truth had spoken louder than her insults. She had wanted to destroy me in court, but she had destroyed herself instead. That was the fallout. Her pride gone, her lies crushed, her reputation shattered, and her future in ruins. When the judge dismissed her case and the courtroom emptied, I walked out with my head high. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. She had tried to break me with words, calling me useless, trying to paint me as weak in front of family and strangers. But in the end, it was her lies that were broken. The truth I carried in silence had done what my anger never could. I did not need to shout. I did not need to beg anyone to believe me. I let the proof speak, and it spoke louder than anything else. She left the courtroom with her face down, her tears staining the papers that once carried her false claims. Her family refused to walk with her. Her lawyer looked away, embarrassed to be tied to her lies. She had lost everything in that moment. Her dignity, her reputation, her case, her chance to discard me as if I were nothing. I gained something greater than money or property. I gained my dignity back. I gained peace. I realized then that justice is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent, sharp, and final. Justice was me standing in court, calm and steady, while her own sins were read out in front of everyone. Justice was the judge seeing her true face and denying her what she thought she could steal. Justice was walking out of that building, knowing I had endured humiliation, but had turned it back on her without ever lowering myself to her level. She had called me useless, but in the end, it was her who stood powerless. She had tried to destroy me, but she destroyed herself instead. I walked away free, not just from her lies, but from her completely. She lost her marriage, she lost her pride, and she lost her mask. I left with my dignity, and that was worth more than anything else. My final thought is simple. She tried to shame me. She tried to discard me, but the truth was my strength, and the truth proved that I was stronger than her lies.